All right, welcome to What You Need to Know for Audio Engineers. Here we're talking about microphones, all the various different kinds of microphones and applications for microphones. Let's start off with wired versus wireless microphones. I've got a couple examples here as well, so I'll just lean down and pick those up. So here are a couple of microphones here, and these are both SM58 microphones. They're both the same microphone, but the difference is this one is wired. It's got a cable output on the back, and this one is wireless. Does not have a cable output. It has a transmitter built into it. Wireless transmitter. So the main difference between these two is as simple as it seems. This one has a cable coming out of the back, runs out along the stage back to the mix rack, and this one does not. This has a battery inside of it, and it transmits wirelessly to a receiver in the rack. And I will show a clip of that really quickly here. All right, so here you can see right here, these two units right here are our receivers for our wireless microphones. From these receivers, they are sent via the network through something called Dante. Our mix rack communicates with this to receive the signal via Dante. Next, let's talk about handheld versus headset. Obviously, handheld is a microphone that you're going to be holding. I've got the mic clip on here. Handheld, you're going to be holding in your hand, and headset. Right, so here's an example of a headset microphone, but it's just a microphone attached to a headset, and it's got a cable running that runs down the speaker's back through their shirt, and it's got this little cable. That cable connects to the transmitter, and now in this case it is still a wireless microphone, but the transmitter is separate from the microphone itself. The transmitter is a separate entity, and there's actually a cable that plugs into the transmitter. Works the same way as a regular wireless microphone. The transmitter transmits to one of those receivers you just saw in the rack, and it works exactly the same way. It's got batteries inside here. Okay, now let's talk about dynamic microphones versus condenser microphones. There's one big difference between the two, and let me grab my examples here. A couple of Shure microphones again, just because we've got them anyway. So here's a dynamic microphone, that SM58. Here's a condenser microphone. This is an SM81. Yes, SM81 condenser microphone. The main difference between these two kinds of microphones is that the condenser needs something called phantom power, and the dynamic does not. Phantom power is sent from the mixing console through a cable. These are wired microphones. Both of these are wired microphones. And phantom power runs from the mixing console through the cable into the microphone through the input or the output here. So it's kind of cool. Like if you're familiar with Power over Ethernet, PoE, in networking, this is a very similar concept. The cable is not only carrying audio from the microphone to the mixing console, the mixing console is also sending power through the cable to the microphone. So it's a two-in-one kind of cable. The cable is doing power and audio at the same time. It's pretty cool. And usually microphones are getting 48 volts phantom power. So you'll look for some button on the mix rack that says 48 volts, and that will send phantom power to this. Important note for safety, safety of the equipment, don't send phantom power to anything that doesn't need it. So this is why it's so important to know the gear, and that's why I'm doing this, is because you can actually damage the gear without realizing it and not knowing why. Do not send phantom power to anything that does not need it. And condenser microphones are one of those items that needs phantom power to function. I forgot to show this earlier. I've got an XLR cable here, and you can see that there's those 3 pins that you could see inside of the microphone as well. So right there inside the wired microphone, you can see those 3 pins inside there. There's those same 3 pins inside the cable, and this is the side that plugs into the microphone. So it only goes in one way. Plug it in, and there you go. You've got a cable coming out of your microphone, and that plugs into your mix rack. And this is called an XLR cable. You can see this is our patch bay. And you can see all of these cables going into it are XLR cables. They plug into XLR inputs on our patch bay, and that is where the audio comes from. You can see, you could follow these cables along all the way down to the stage, and those cables go to instruments. They come back into here, and they plug in here. And we've got an I/O reference sheet that shows us which instrument is plugged into which input, and where everything is routed to, and I'll have a separate video on that as well, showing you our reference sheet. We've also got some little adapters like this. I'll try and get a close-up shot of this a little bit later, but these little tiny adapters, you can see this is a thread adapter, and this will, well, we need these because not all microphone stands are created equally. There are two standards in microphone stands, and if you get a microphone stand and you realize that it's got a small thread but your microphone clip has a large thread on it, then it's, just get a $2 adapter and you can still use that microphone stand with that microphone clip. Also on microphone clips, all microphone clips are different as well. Let me just grab the SM58s, the wireless and the wired. These are two, well, you can see the difference in the thickness of the microphones, if I can show that here. These are very differently sized, and if I took the microphone clip off of the wireless microphone and I wanted to use it on the wired microphone, this just won't hold. You need to make sure that you're using the right microphone clip for the right microphone, or else you will have an accident on stage. And microphones can be relatively fragile, especially condenser microphones can be relatively fragile. Things like the SM58, there's videos of guys running these over with semi-trucks, and they pick it up and talk straight into it and it still works. So dynamic mics, relatively more robust, but still these can break, and I've had to repair one of these before. Actually, I don't know if it was this one. And if you look inside right there, it's just a couple of wires, and this is not the one that I repaired. But these are really small wires and they can break relatively easily. So you have to be careful with your microphones, otherwise you can damage them. All right, last thing that we're going to talk about is drum microphones, and for that we're going to go visit the drum cage. So here's our drum cage. We're going to see in here that we've got a number of different kinds of microphones. First of all, our bass drum microphone here. That is a Shure Beta 58, a really common dynamic bass kick drum microphone. Then we see our snare, another dynamic microphone, the SM57. This is the snare top microphone. If we look here, we've got also a snare bottom microphone. This is a condenser, so it's using phantom power, 48 volts. And this is one of those SM81s that I was just showing a minute ago. Next we see the hi-hat. So these are the three main components of the drum kit: the kick, snare, and hi-hat. Hi-hat, this is another condenser microphone. Usually the cymbals are picked up by a condenser microphone because condensers are typically more sensitive and more articulate and can capture more high frequency detail. Next we see the toms, and these are all using the same microphone right here, just a little clip-on. Then the last piece of the kit is the overhead microphones. Again, these are capturing the cymbals as well as kind of a stereo image overall of the whole kit. And that's all of the microphones in the drum cage. One last piece to consider here is the electronic drums that we have, and it's a line output, so there's no microphones. Obviously there's no microphones on an electronic drum kit, and that goes to a DI, and that DI has an XLR cable output, so everything is still going into the mix rack through XLR.